In the Bible, Paul explains that everyone has two bodies, a physical body and a spiritual body. Mediums use their spiritual bodies when they act as a communication bridge between the physical and spirit worlds. As a spirit speaks, mediums hear the information using the ears of their spiritual bodies, then repeat the information to other physical people. Mediumship is synonymous with the biblical term gifts of the Spirit. The focus of our show, Making Known the Unknown, is to provide knowledge through the use of Reverend Hewitt's mediumship and Sidney Schwartz's research. The Bible contains the history of psychic events, along with man-made doctrines created by priests centuries ago. This show will explore the untruths which the Bible entrenched into our society. By uncovering these untruths, we encourage people everywhere to think for themselves with a critical mind.
Hello, and welcome to Making Known the Unknown. I'm your host, Tina Tarryk, and with me today are Sidney Schwartz, Bible researcher of 26 years now, is it, Sid?
About that, yes.
And middle school teacher all the way up from Hackensack, New Jersey. Welcome, Sid.
Hi, Tina.
And Reverend Carl Hewitt, founder and pastor of the Gifts of the Spirit Church. Too much coffee there already today. and the church is in Chesterfield, Connecticut. And medium. And for those of you who don't know, you will soon know what that means. The topic for today's show is Satan is profitable. And if you have watched any of our past shows, one of the shows that came very similar to this was Sin is Profitable. And just like the focus with Sin is Profitable, Satan is Profitable is an attempt to share with our viewers just how the whole notion of the devil and Satan and demons and exorcisms that are performed all over the world are big business for many, many church organizations. And it's actually getting bigger rather than going away. I find that kind of interesting. Okay, with that and telling our viewers that they will soon know what medium means, I'd like to turn it over to Reverend Hewitt, who I understand wants to share with our viewers something about Jesus being a medium.
Absolutely. Jesus was the greatest medium that has ever walked this earth. And I would like to direct this directly to the viewers. And if you don't have a Bible, borrow one from a motel. I mean, they got plenty of money, they'll replace them. Whoever brings them in there, they'll bring it, they'll replace it. But look in the book of John. Now we're in the New Testament now. Look in the book of John, chapter 4, verse 24, where Jesus meets, he stops and he told the boys to go on because they're going through this particular little village to some other place, and he was tired because it was a long walk. Don't forget they didn't have cars in those days. And he was tired, and he was resting his feet and his legs, and he was sitting there with his eyes closed near the well because everybody would know where the well was, and because they all used the same well in that little village. And he said, go get some food and meet me back here at the well. And there was a woman that came and got water, and when he heard this person shuffling around the well there, he opened his eyes, and there was a woman getting ready to draw up some water. And he asked her to give him some water because he had no way of getting the water out of that well. It was quite deep. And so she was a Samaritan, and him being a Jew, and up to that point, no, these people didn't talk to each other. They hated each other, just like today in some races, they don't talk to each other. And so she asked him for water. And she turned on her heels and said to him, you got a lot of nerve. You're asking me for water. You're a man. You should be giving me water instead. He said, woman, if I gave you water, it would be like a spring that just springs up into you and you would never get thirsty again. He was referring to knowledge, not the water in the well. And so she became very interested because she knew that he was not a regular person that she's used to talking to. So she fills up her water pot with water and hands it to him. And he took a big slug of that water, and then as he was releasing the pot of water from his own lips, she says, now you give me some of your water. And he said, now here he's kind of playing a little game with her. He's trying to find out if she'll be honest with him, because he already knows what's going on here. And he said, you go fetch your husband and I will give you some of my water. And she says, well, I don't have any husband. Well, he said, woman, you speak the truth. There's been 4 men that you've lived with, and none of them you've ever married. And he proceeds to give her a reading at the well. Now, it's the same kind of reading that you will get if you go to a genuine medium. Not a fortune teller, not a gypsy, but a genuine medium who has the gift of the Spirit. Because that person is in touch with another realm, another dimension of people that have passed on, people that know you. And I mean, it's not like everybody over there knows you, but there are some people that do know you. They've passed on, your relatives, friends. And so they were telling him about her, and she gets very excited there, and she runs, even leaves him with her water pot, and she runs and telling everybody that she was seeing on the way back to her house, come to the well and listen to the prophet. He's told me everything I've ever done. People read that. It's in the Bible. This is Jesus, the one you've been taught to worship. It was the man that was selected to be the God when they kicked the other one out before him.
It's in John chapter 4, verse 29.
You want to share that with us?
Oh, it's
Sid?
exactly what it says.
Okay.
Come see a man who told me all the things that I have ever done. Is this not the Christ? Is it?
Exactly.
Now, how come we don't hear Jesus referred to as a medium?
Because a mediumship is a threat to the priesthood. It's a threat. And so this is why they try to get everybody away from that, and this is why they plant that virus in the people dealing with the devil. There is no such thing as the devil. Because before I started doing this work, I said, I want to know something, and if you don't answer me, I'm not going to do a damn thing that you tell me to do. And so my first question was, I want to know if there was a devil. And you know what the answer says? Reason it out. Reason it out. They're telling me, reason it out. If God created the earth and the heavens and everything in between, then God must have created the devil. But why should God create a competitor? He said there is no such thing. That was created by the church in the beginning, between the year 325 and 386. It was spoken about by all of these different priests. And then it finally went into the book, and then they created it from there on about the devil. And then they started saying that these people that have this ability was doing the devil's work. Well, if that is true, people, and you are smart enough to borrow or steal that Bible I'm telling you about, you read in there where Jesus gives the woman a well. If that's the case, then wasn't Jesus doing the devil's work?
Exactly.
Think about it.
In verse 19 it says, and the woman said to him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet.
Yeah.
A prophet and the medium are synonymous. The prophet is the biblical term,
Sure.
medium is the 21st century term.
Right.
Same
They
thing.
prophesize, they
Right.
predict, the same as Reverend
Same.
Hewitt does
Same
here,
thing.
very many times over and over. And as many, many other mediums we are seeing coming out more and more in the media do, legitimately. But yet it happens, and I know you've made examples of this in other shows, that many different people in the Bible have performed readings,
Yes.
whatever you want to call them.
And as I mentioned in the other tape, that Spirit told me that if I'll be called in to be tested, that they will not be with me. And without them, I can do nothing. Jesus said, without the God within me, I cannot do anything. Well, the God within me is my soul, just like with everybody else. God's not in a piece of real estate in the sky. God's within us. And the moment that this heart stops, which is nothing but a pump, the moment it stops, it gives birth to the spirit body, which is energy, and we go on living completely. And our body's in a body of energy, because knowledge is stored in the soul. We take that with us. As I've been telling people for a long time, that knowledge is your passport into forever. And there's so many people going into the world of spirit now that they have one bit of knowledge. They're lost. They don't know where they are. Because the minute they go in, they're looking for Jesus. They're not going to find him there. He's with the ascended masters on a higher dimension than they could ever dream about being. This is what's happening. The spirit people want me to teach as many people as possible, because the people are pouring into that dimension ignorant of where they are. They have nothing, and they tell me that the knowledge that they have stored in their soul is their passport when they get there. But they're so ignorant, they're going there, and everyone is running all over the place trying to find Jesus. Leave the poor man alone, my God. He hasn't had a moment's peace since he died, that awful, horrible death. Give him a break.
Would you also say your focus is to open up people's base of knowledge so that when they choose to come back in another lifetime, they don't have to go through the same suffering, the
That's
same
right.
brainwashing, the
That's
same
right.
experience, and can have a better life?
Number one, get rid of the idea that there's a devil. There is no such place. Get rid of the idea there's hell. There's no such place. Hell is right here on earth. If you want to find a devil, go out on the streets. In the back alleys, you'll find them. When you realize once and for all that God is within you, that is your second body, just like that book says, we're born with two bodies. He can tell you in a jiffy where it says you're born with two bodies.
1 Corinthians 15, verse 40.
Thank you.
1 Corinthians 15th verse,
Yep, verse 40. I
verse
believe.
40.
Okay.
It says you're born with two bodies. You're born with a physical body, which is we all see in the mirror, and the spirit body we do not see. It's energy.
I wonder, just for a minute to interrupt, I wonder how theologians explain that one away.
They don't. They stay away from it.
Oh, okay.
And you
All
ask
right,
them,
go ahead.
you ask them, and this is the answer they give. Well, we haven't tested that out, or we haven't studied that enough. That's their stupid
It's a
answer.
mystery of the church.
It's a mystery of the
Okay.
church. It's a
Falls under
mystery
that
of
category.
God.
Okay, all right.
They don't want
It's
people
not meant
to
to be
know.
known.
If you ask too much, you're not supposed to question.
That's right.
All right.
They'll put you on a guilt trip. And if you ask too much, if you're a kid and you were in the school and you ask too much, they'll get you out of there. They don't want you to come back. This nun that did the great painting that you saw, she was one that asked a lot of questions. Well, she stayed in that, as some people call it, a penitentiary for 27 years. And she got out of it. And I've talked with others, too. There was one that came into my beauty salon years ago. I didn't know there was something different about her. I wanted to go over and take care of her hair. I didn't know where it was a haircut or what it was. And she spotted me, and she asked me if I had the time to do it. Well, she was already with appointment with somebody, one of the other operators, and she asked the operator, would she mind if I have meet, because she wants to talk to me. You see, she had second sight. She could see the light around me. She knew I was a medium. I could see the light around her. And then we got started. She says, this is my first anniversary today. I said, what do you mean? She says, 1 year ago today, she says, I left the convent. She says, because I used to go into the private office and give my, what was it, Mother Superior, is that the name?
Right.
Mother Superior readings, and she'd always have me come in after everybody else had gone to sleep.
Really?
You know, and she said, I used to go into trance. And then when the spirit people from a higher levels started talking to me, she says, I couldn't stay there any longer because I wasn't living the truth. And she was a beautiful person. Beautiful person. I always wondered what happened to her.
And she was celebrating the fact that she was no
Yeah.
longer there.
That's why she
That's
said,
her anniversary.
she says, I want you to give me a good haircut because she said, I'm celebrating my first anniversary.
Wow. Isn't that something?
She was put in there, she said, when she was 12. I would say she's probably 35, 36 then.
Anyone recently explained to us that back in the 300s that the church went out to seek the mediums and to get them to become priests because they felt that if they were living off the organization, that they wouldn't, they would ignore the spirit voices talking to them about how the doctrines are incorrect, because they'd be part of the system. So they tried to bring them in to recruit them to be priests. It was like either become a priest or we'll kill you.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, just like the Crusades.
Right, exactly.
Convert or go.
Yep.
Excuse me, the last
Yep.
thing that they told me was just afternoon, I forgot to tell you about that earlier, that the way we're going on this planet now, everything that's going on over there in Iraq is caused by religion, because they're teaching these children, starting at 4 years old, to kill themselves, commit suicide, but take the Americans. The Americans are the people, devil's people, you see. And here we are with two religions. It's a holy war. And Spirit told me that the way things are going now, unless people open their minds and start thinking for themselves and get beyond all of this, that we are going to destroy ourselves. He said, truly, the world stands a chance of being destroyed, just like Mars was. And he said, you've got too many weapons, and with these people running loose around here and everything else, and they're being brainwashed. He said, there's more being brainwashed from the schools over there. And he said, they're going to infiltrate this whole country. He said, they're all over this country now, and if you'll notice, they're being planted in different places. I have been to some places, I wonder, how in the world did those people wind up here? This place is so God-forsaken as far as I'm concerned. But they're there. They're all over. And they said that this is going to continue until the day it all blows up. And they will do it.
Very
So
interesting.
the people here in the Americas have to start thinking for themselves, because they have been under mind control by religions. This is a heavy statement to make, but they told me not to hesitate to tell the people.
And the people who are the perpetrators of these prospective crimes, who would be nationals of Iraqi, I don't know how you want to refer to that, as they may or not be native of that country, but they're at least affiliated with them or the cause. They, at one point in another lifetime, died with a set of knowledge and came back, and it looks like they didn't learn much, and they're right back in the same role, possibly.
Well, A1's been saying that a lot of the terrorists that are alive today, who want to slaughter the Christians, are reincarnated Christians from the 4th century who were slaughtering the pagans because of religion. So they're doing the exact same thing they had done before centuries ago.
So it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop at all.
That's the knowledge they're carrying in their soul.
They say, over there, they teach that Jesus is not the God. Muhammad is the real God, and Muhammad wants them to kill everybody that is bothered with Jesus.
Sure.
Well, that's not
Sure.
exactly true. They say Allah is the God, and Muhammad was his prophet.
Well,
Okay.
I meant
Yeah.
Allah. I don't
Okay.
even get into that. It's sickening to me.
But the Islamic people believe that Jesus is going to return to earth because they revere him as a prophet, and just like the Jews think of Jesus as a prophet, and that at the end of the times that Jesus is coming back, he's going to destroy the cross and become Islamic. That's their belief.
Wow. That's really something.
Yeah.
Belief of the week, right?
I'm going to say something here that I really don't want to say, but I'm going to say it because it'll be heard by a lot of people around the country. The day will come that I will die in the hands of the church, simply because of what I'm teaching.
How do you feel about that, Carl?
I don't feel good at all about it, because we're living today in just more ignorance, as far as I'm concerned, than Jesus lived in. The priest killed him. He didn't die for the sins of the world. He died for the sins of the priest.
I bet you they're not going to show it in the movie The Passion, though, will they?
I don't know.
That'll be interesting to show that. Well, you touched upon the devil earlier, and the purpose of this show is to show how the devil and all that's created and connected with it is becoming very profitable with respect to exorcisms and demons. And in fact, I really happened upon this by accident. This happens way too often. There was something that happened in the news this past week, and maybe our viewers are aware of this, but a 6-year-old girl was found dead in a motel room, strangled, stabbed, beaten, and covered in pages torn from a Bible. And this was possibly an attempt, or had something to do with undemonizing the child. I guess the parents have been arrested or in custody. There were two other children spotted in that area, naked, running up and down the street. They weren't sure if they were their children or not. But I was already going to be talking about exorcism in the U.S. and what a big, booming business it's become. And I saw several documentaries dealing with that. And then here we are this past week. We have something happening where a mother and father, who I'm guessing are part of some
The child's brain was damaged when she was born because of them. The mother was having trouble giving birth, and they used this thing around the head of the child. It damaged the brain.
Really?
And this is what happened.
Isn't that something?
But they didn't say a word about that to anybody. They thought they were following that idiotic teaching from the church.
So you're saying that the hospital probably knew that there was some kind of damage when the child was born?
Yeah.
And the parents had kept that secret?
Yes.
But because of their fanatical, it would appear, religious beliefs?
Yeah.
They tried to take care of it another way?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Of course, I didn't read that in this newspaper
Poor
article.
child was innocent.
Yeah,
She died a horrible, horrible, horrible death, they've told me.
really. And folks, you're not going to see this in any newspaper.
No.
Maybe possibly for several days, if at all, if they ever uncover the truth. So remember, you heard it here first. And that's even more shocking, unfortunately, to hear that. And of course, with that, there are two people who I'd recently researched who are big exorcists in the United States.
Making tons of money.
They are. It's a $2 million industry, folks. The first person's name is Bob Larson, and his acronyms that he uses are DWJD, which is Do What Jesus Did. And before we jump into that, my first thought is, did Jesus do any exorcising that you knew of, Sid or Carl?
Well, they wrote it in the book that he did, but they told me he didn't.
Okay. Because these people are convinced that they are following in the footsteps of Jesus.
Well, back in biblical times, the times that Jesus lived in, they thought or it was claimed that disease was caused by demons. And if someone was ill, it wasn't because of viruses or bacteria or germs, it was because they had a demon in them. So Jesus did a lot of healings, throughout the New Testament, or throughout the Gospels, I should say. So he was thought of as getting rid of these demons, which is where the whole idea of getting rid of exorcism is. They said the demon would come out and the person would be healed. Well, there's other ways of healing that doesn't involve demons. It involves energy. It involves many different aspects of healing that he was using because he had the gift of healing as one of the gifts of the Spirit. So it all depends. This book was written through the scientific knowledge of the first century, by the people who wrote it down. So they reading about all this demons, getting rid of demons from people's bodies, but it didn't exist.
This gets back to the draining of the four liquids in your body back in the Renaissance. They felt that when there was bloodletting to heal of disease, it sounds very primitive, doesn't it?
Right, it does.
Carl, you want to share something?
When a person had, for instance, a pain in the side, the right side, could have been an appendix, you see. Well, they always call that a demon.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
They didn't know what to do with that. They didn't know anything about appendix at all.
Okay.
And if you had a headache, it was because there was a demon.
Right.
And all this other stuff.
Right.
We're going back to the days. To me, there's many people out there ignorant today as they were in those days.
Right.
But today, they've got that virus in their mind, which is everything about the devil, see.
Now, that makes me think of that book, The Castrated Woman,
Yeah.
where when women, hundreds of years ago, would show symptoms of their menses once a month and have hormonal changes associated with that, they thought some of these women were crazy. And they would go to great extents, right down to the point of operating, removing organs unnecessarily, because they didn't understand what was really going on.
Exactly.
It makes me think of that. Kind of crazy, huh?
And these guys that go around and say, well, I can remove that demon for you, or, that's ridiculous. There are houses, some of them in this area, by the way, I've been to them, and the spirit people that are there, because they're still earthbound, and they still live in the house, and now and then they create these noises and things, because they have to live with these people that's living in the present time. I'm talking about physical beings. You see, just like the time over here in Franklin, those three spirit people, the man, wife, and little child, they all died within the same week, and they were trying to find each other, but they were earthbound, and when they were calling out each other, sometimes the voice would be audible enough that you could hear it. People in the house would hear it. The house kept being sold over and over and over again, but nobody would ever talk about it being haunted. But when I went over there with my class one night and we found out that what was going on, got them together, and there's people that own that house never had a problem since. The same thing down in Noank. The house down there was haunted for years.
Isn't that something?
I'd like to explain to the audience, in case people don't understand the term earthbound. Carl said that these spirits were earthbound. When the person dies and the spirit leaves the physical body, what's going to happen next depends a lot on what the person understands and knows.
Yes.
If the person understands that there's a life, afterlife, and they realizes that they die, then they go into the light, they go into the higher frequencies. There are those people who don't know that, and they don't even realize they died. So they keep living in the same vibration. They think they're in their physical body, but they're not. And they are the ones that we call earthbound, because they keep living an earthly existence in the spirit world, and they haven't realized that they've gone. Now, sometimes this happens when there's been an accident, like a fire or something like that.
Something sudden.
Right. And so sometimes at a seance, mediums will do what they call rescue work, and they come across these earthbound spirits, and they explain to them what they need to do in order to go into the correct higher vibrations, and to go to where they should have gone. But this is all based on the fact that if people would learn about the two bodies as Jesus taught and understand the process of death, there would never not be earthbound spirits.
Right.
Let me add, on the other program, when I was talking about the book, The Other Side by Bishop Pike,
Right.
well, the second reading through the transmedium in a twig in London, that the bishop, don't forget, up to the time that the priests dragged him almost to her house to get a reading. And so the second reading, his son, who had committed suicide, told him that he's found out, the only thing he found out over there, asking others, where was Jesus? Because that was his first question, are you with Jesus?
Right.
And he said, Dad, I've asked, and they said, if there's anybody by that name over here, he's got to be on a very high vibration, which he is. He's probably the highest dimension over there. See, in my Father's house are many dimensions, but they changed that word from dimension to mansion in the Bible. My Father's house are many mansions. A lot of people that know the Bible, they would contradict what I'm saying.
Right.
But the priests changed that word from dimensions to mansions, because they didn't know what a dimension was. And he was telling him that if he's over there, he's at a very high dimension, see.
Now, you're referring to entities who, because of their lack of knowledge and not opening their mind while they were living, which is exactly what we're trying to do to prevent from happening, end up in these people's homes causing havoc.
Yeah.
Now,
poltergeist.
Right. Bob Larson, who I'm referring to, and I'm going to talk a little bit about his background here, deals more with people themselves who are what we would call possessed by demons and devils. And I find that very interesting. He claims to be the world's foremost expert on cults, the occult, and supernatural phenomena. He's lectured in more than 80 countries. This is all kind of scary, too, to me, and has appeared on TV shows such as Oprah, Donahue, Montel, Sally, Jesse, CNBC Talk, Live, Larry King, and so on and so forth. He's written 30 books, and his book, A Spiritual Warfare, that he's put together, it's called Spiritual Warfare, is an encyclopedia reference about demons, the devil, and deliverance, and represents a lifetime of research and experience. And I guess what I'm getting at is that he spent a lifetime of researching and experiencing ignorance. Is that what we're saying? Because there really is no such thing as demons or devils or people being possessed. But yet he makes a pretty good living, it would appear, on presenting information and charging people for this.
The thing I want to say is here, the average person out there, they will not do their homework to check up to see if he's legitimate. I would like to go to him and let him show me the stubs of all the airline tickets going to all of these countries, a receipt from all the places that he's paid a lot of money for and the audiences that he's talked to.
Really?
You know, there's a lot of these people are very, very clever when it comes to money. They could cook up all this garbage, and people in this country, they grab that and they read it and believe every word of it.
Now listen, I'm going to quote him. He says, Satan traffics in human suffering, and we take people to the point of the pain to discover where their souls have been scarred, allowing demons to torment them. Often exorcism is part of the healing process that follows. So this sounds very much like the way the notion of Jesus performing healings had gotten twisted into somehow removing demons at the same time.
Well, you
it's
know what,
just as old.
It sounds like to me is very much like what Dr. Brian Weiss does with past life regression. To healing the scars of the soul from a past life experience mentally, not through demons, of course. But so the concept is right. It's just the methodology of approaching it is radically different, and I don't believe that man's correct.
Okay, so he goes on to say the art of exorcism that he performs is an astonishing public performance.
I bet it is.
And a lot of people are very, very convinced that what he does is legitimate. And he's a very good actor. I've seen some of the things that he's done. And some of the people who quote and talk about him say that because people are having end-of-the-world fears, this is giving ministers a new line of work and something to do. And when at the beginning of the show I was saying how exorcisms are actually on the rise, you would think that they wouldn't be, but in fact more people are buying into it. What do you think about that?
Well, let me talk about this. Many years ago, it probably goes back to around 1978, Reverend Hewitt had a seminar called Psychic Pathways. It was here in Norwich at the, I think it was the Sheridan Hotel at the time. One of Reverend Hewitt's associates was there with a camera and took some pictures. And the picture that that was taken showed a bubble of light around a particular person, because what was going to happen was that person was going to go into trance. That was the spirit that was going to take that body over. It showed up on film, and that man went into trance and gave a lecture. Now, most people aren't clairvoyant and would not have seen that. Reverend Hewitt saw that with his physical eyes. Many of us got to see it because somehow Spirit allowed this to be photographed and captured on film so we could see it. So if a clairvoyant were to attend some of these seances, they would be able to see that nothing really is happening there. They would not see a spirit coming out of the body, a negative spirit. There is no exorcism there. Okay?
Right.
There might be some mass hysteria there. People might be reacting to the way they were programmed to think if there's a demon in them. If I go through the ceremony and I gyrate enough and do this and that the spirit would leave and psychosomatically cause themselves to feel better because it's all in their head to begin with.
Right.
That might be going on. Okay. But the only way to know if that a real exorcism would be taking place is to have a clairvoyant there. And I'm sure that person wouldn't allow a legitimate clairvoyant to be present.
Probably not. What about the expression that we all have heard over and over, the devil made me do it? What is that doing? What is that saying?
I want to say this word so much. I want to say this word so much, but I wouldn't dare. They're probably in the control room want to blurp it out. I'll use bullsh. I'm sure everybody gets the message.
You can say bull sheetrock. I've heard that said on radio.
Isn't this another way to excuse people from being responsible for being in tune with who they are, where they're going, and their knowledge? The devil made me do it, so get the devil out of me. I sinned, so take away the devil. What is that about?
There's no such thing as the devil in a person. Everybody has everybody has the ability to love other people, But that person, I don't care how loving they may be, they also have a temper. Takes a lot of people, sometimes a lot to, you know, get them steamed up, but there's a temper there. Might be hidden. And you can say that the temper of that person would be equivalent to the evil one.
Okay. All right.
And there are only two paths to follow on this planet. The path of God, which is being good and caring and loving for each other, because we're all going the same direction. And the other one is the path of humanity. And this was why the great teacher told me that he was having trouble with his students. And you know who I'm talking about, his 12 students. That's how he addresses them to me. He doesn't say my 12 disciples. And he was having trouble getting them to understand the two paths. And so one evening in the Garden of Gethsemane, when he had sent them on by themselves, because he would not allow them to follow him everywhere, and so he got the idea, I'm going to demonstrate the path of humanity tomorrow. So the next day, when he showed up at the marketplace, he was over there turning over the tables of the change makers and everything else and swearing at them and everything. And then that night when they met in the upper room, it was Thomas that said, Master, you made an ass of yourself today. What was the point in that? And he says, I'm sick and tired of you guys. I've been trying to get you to understand there are two paths. There's the path of God and the path of humanity. And what I did today was the path of humanity. He got the message across.
Well, it would seem that more people are on the path of humanity these days because the increase and people who are performing exorcisms, especially in the evangelical Protestant faith, is more than the Catholics, as sanctioned by the Pope and the Vatican, although they are slowly increasing their numbers.
Well, they'll get into it as soon as they find out how much money is coming in from it.
Well, like I said, with Bob Larson, and there's another gentleman I'm going to talk about, his name is Tom Brown, they both pull in millions of dollars based on this belief of the devil and demons and pulling that out of people.
Spirit just told me something here that's pretty heavy, and I was hesitating not even to touch it, but I think I will. Good time to put it here.
Okay.
He said that recently, within the last year, since there was so many cases of all this sex stuff with the Catholic priest, that there is a certain bishop on the planet here that deposited $1 billion. $1 billion.
With a B. Okay.
With a B.
Wow.
$1 billion in the Vatican Bank, because the Vatican Bank was to go into bankruptcy the next week. And this bishop deposited that much money into that bank, and it kept him from going into bankruptcy.
So where'd the bishop get it from?
Yeah, right. That's a good question.
Good question. I'm not going to get into that.
Wow. Speaking of the Vatican, it seems like these days, although they are quietly increasing their appointed exorcists, I think they're like up to about 20 now, the last I read, they are also going in the other direction, and I have something written here that the Vatican is saying that they want to depersonalize Satan now, that he's only a psychological disturbance in every person. And so what's interesting is that the officials are saying that the church isn't revising the scriptural references to the devil or suggesting that people should cease believing in the evil one, but the priests conducting exorcisms should deal with evil as a force lurking within all individuals instead of one that threatens people from without. Isn't that kind of a good thing? Because now it's at least going from some crazy made-up story of one being into looking inside.
They're touching the path of humanity.
Yeah.
That's what that's about.
Okay.
Wouldn't you say that?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Now, these two gentlemen have such a following, and their websites have many people writing into them and sharing their thoughts. And most of them are supporters, and that really scared me. It really scared me to read some of their responses. Except a couple of them were leaning on the side that they wished, while these people were doing these exorcisms, or showing their faith through performing exorcisms, that they weren't in a fundraiser mode. That's an exact quote right here. So some of them are a little bit upset that if they're doing God's work, why are they asking for money for it? And I thought that was kind of interesting, because that's usually the case, that they need to have everyone's money to keep all this show going. But what was a little disturbing too is that they are using some Bible quotes here, trying to give a very strong reference that they are again doing just what Jesus did, and to cast the demons out of people. And another person here referenced performing as the apostles did during and after the days of our Lord. Did the apostles do this too? Did they have anything to do with removing demons from people?
The apostles were taught the gift of healing, and they did go out and heal. And in those days, they would have thought they were getting rid of demons, but they were actually doing healings.
Okay.
That is the case, because it even talks about St. Paul in one place where he took a piece of cloth and he energized it, and he cut it into pieces and gave it out, and as long as and people would hold on to the cloth and be healed. Now that's a certain form of healing, and that's discussed in the Bible, because I remember quoting it in crossovers. So they did perform healing. So, but
right.
it's
what was
all
behind
how
it?
It's being viewed.
Right. They didn't get what was going on behind it.
Right.
Like a lot of things. Now, Tom Brown's book is titled "The Role of Demons in Disease." Are we back in the 1st century here?
Seems that way.
And it's a book that deals with healing through deliverance. And he quotes...
Is that Tom Brown in New Jersey that has these classes and stuff?
I don't know.
Can't be.
I never heard of him.
Can't be. I know him.
He's, no,
I'll
this
give him a punch in
gentleman...
the nose if I see him.
This gentleman is from the South or the Mid-Atlantic region, from my understanding here. Possibly over towards Texas, I think, this gentleman.
The Bible Belt.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he's in full belief that there are 6 days for work. This is where he tries to link up with the Bible and use this. So come on and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath, the Lord answered him. You hypocrites, doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on the Sabbath day from what bound her? And this is in Luke 13:10 in the Bible. And I thought, what's going on here? Is this just another section of the Bible where the priests have put in Satan and used it?
What's really going on here is it's the same discussion that goes on today, but within the Jewish community between the different branches of Judaism. The Orthodox won't do anything on the Sabbath. They won't cook. They won't turn on a light switch, because to them that's work. Because way back in biblical times, in order to create light, you had to light a fire. And yes, that was work to get that spark going. Today, you just flick a switch and go and you have light. So the Reform group says this is crazy. I'm putting on my switch on the Sabbath, that's not work. The Orthodox says it is work. So you got this theology going back into the 1st century, where they're talking about what is work. Is healing on the Sabbath really work, or isn't it work? You were allowed to untie, in other words, you were allowed to perform work to feed animals to keep them alive. That's why they're talking about taking the ox and untying it so it could go get water.
Right.
Okay, you were allowed to do that because the animals needed to be fed 7 days a week. They were taking the day off because of the Sabbath. So this is what's being quoted there. As far as the rest of it with Satan goes, well, that's because that's how they viewed, that's the 1st century viewpoint of illness.
But wait a minute. Tying your shoe would be labor.
Yes. Carrying a key is labor. You weren't allowed to carry anything outside of your house. So an Orthodox Jewish person cannot take their key, that they would lock the door and go and walk to the synagogue. So what do? They make a tie clasp out of it. Therefore, it becomes an article of clothing, and they can do it. They've come around. The Orthodox create loopholes for themselves to get around all this stuff. But it's nonsense. It's recycled ignorance. That's what it goes back to.
But the Sabbath is the day to have the demons removed. That's the day you should focus on that, is what I'm getting from this message here.
Well, what they were saying is you shouldn't be doing healings on the Sabbath because that's work.
Oh,
Okay,
oh, oh, oh,
that's the
okay.
point of this thing,
get it, I get
and
it.
Jesus supposedly is saying, well, what, you can free your animals. Why can't you free the woman from this demon? It's
Okay,
not
I get
work.
it.
Okay,
all
so
right.
that's what this whole theological debate's all about. But it's meaningless.
Let me read you another quote, too. He goes on to say, on another occasion, a man knelt before Jesus, saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, he said. He has seizures and is suffering greatly. He often falls into the fire or into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not heal him. Could not heal him. O unbelieving and perverse generation, Jesus replied. How long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy here to me. Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of the boy, and he was healed from that moment. This is in Matthew 17:15. Does Jesus ever have any connection whatsoever with Satan or the demon?
No,
I mean, I didn't think so from what
I questioned that
from what we're
myself.
doing.
Jesus went there and he took over the problem that the kid had. He took it in his own body,
Okay.
and then he got rid of it himself.
Okay.
If people could see the movie Resurrection,
Mm-hmm.
that's what happened to a medium in Southern California. True story. They made a movie of her life.
No, you were talking about movies too, and I had read here that the movie The Exorcist actually was based upon a 13-year-old boy who was, what's the word that they used here? It was blown out of proportion. It was a 13-year-old boy who was frightened and dramatic, and based on that, from his psychotherapist, they created the movie The Exorcist to kind of fit their own need and a way to scare people, I
Right.
guess, try to educate people and control
Absolutely.
people. I didn't know that.
Let me quote something that I just remembered here. I've been testing out some tapes that people send me, and sometimes it takes me forever to get to them. But I was running one this week, and it was about Billy Graham.
Okay.
He was in a stadium, and he'd called all these people together, and he was saying that everybody there, regardless of who they were and where they're coming from and all this stuff, they've got to have Jesus in their heart. Well, here's a man that you would think that he would go out and research, sit in the presence of a deep trance medium and ask the questions from that dimension and get the answers. But no, he comes up with the same garbage that they've been talking about for hundreds of years, recycled ignorance. So he's telling all of these people there that they've got to have Jesus in their heart. The heart is only a pump. Spirit has explained that to me, that when we have our auto machines, we have the different pumps, one for oil, one for air, one for water, and one for gasoline. And the human body has one pump, and that's for the blood. And he said they don't ever try to find out anything about the soul. Religion don't. He doesn't even know anything about the soul, where it is, what it does, and all of that. He knows nothing about it. So he's telling all these people, have faith.
In a pump.
And you've got to have this in your heart.
Right. Right.
And up in North Carolina, where I was from, he's from the Asheville area. One of my dear friends, who was the Belk, that owned the Belk stores down there, his brother's as religious as they come, and he gave Billy Graham a check for $100,000 to build his own church. He went and bought up top of a mountain. It's called Mount Retreat. And he built a home up there. He didn't build a church. He doesn't even own a church. He just goes one place to the other. And but his brother, the one that I know very well, he just passed recently. He found out that there was mediumship was legitimate, and he opened up a research center. He became a researcher just like this man.
Really?
And he's went all over the world. He has one in Japan and one in Germany, one in Australia. He has them all over the world. And he heard about me. He got my number from some people in London. He called me up one day, and he's been to my place 3 or 4 times. I've been to his place many times. And great researcher. He went to Brazil. There's the doctors down there, that doctor that uses the spirit doctors through his body. And he's got some tapes. He's got some 16 millimeter film that a lot of people faint when they see it. They can't stand to watch it. The surgeons, the operations that take place by spirit, spirit doctors.
Right. Nothing demonic, nothing scary going on.
Nothing at all.
Only because people don't have any other knowledge to understand that with. I just, this whole notion of deliverance is such a focus for this person, for Tom Brown, that people have to have the demon taken out of them.
The spirit, somebody's telling me here, for the benefit of the people that are animal lovers, going to watch this show, that horses and dogs have second sight, and they can see the light around a person, and they can tell by the light if that person is a friend or a foe. And this is why some dogs, will stand and stare at you, or horses will stare at you, and then when they size you up, they would come grab a hunk of grass and walk over to you and stand there chomping on it while they're examining you through your light system. That's happened to me many times.
Okay. I think that makes sense if you've ever been around those particular animals.
Yeah.
That you can feel that, and you can see the reaction to someone else next to you could be very different.
Yes.
The nun that did the painting, her dog, that dog understands everything I say. I don't care what it's the conversation. I said, I would really love to take that dog home. Well, that dog ran to the door right away, put his paw on the door. He's ready to go with me. I said, does he understand everything you say? She says, you just keep talking.
So be aware, your dogs are paying attention.
Right.
Sidney, I'm going to throw something out at you. There's a man by the name of Kenneth Hagin. I don't know if you've heard of him. Something tells me you may have run into him.
Kenneth
Hagin, Hagin. And he's another one who does exorcisms.
Don't tell me he's the one that was at University of Connecticut.
I don't know.
And this goes back in the 70s. I spent a whole day with him up there. One of his students wanted me to go up there.
I don't know, but he's one of the things that he has been convinced of when he is trying to remove the demons is, and I'm going to actually quote what he said, "You will have to go." The spirit released the man's head and jumped off his shoulders, landing on the floor. It just looked at Hagin for a moment. Hagin persisted, "You will have to leave the premises now." The spirit whimpered like a beaten dog and stumbled out of the church. What is this coming from? Do you think he's clairvoyant and he could see that?
I would tend not to think he would be.
Did the spirit hurt his head when he hit the floor?
I don't know. It doesn't say that.
Did
But
it
this
go
is
clunk?
he's called a charismatic leader, and he tells these stories of when he was preaching in a country church, and all these experiences that he'd had, and it was a monkey-looking creature wrapping his arms around the man's head in a headlock.
God.
This is, I don't know. This sounds kind of weird. Also, Oral Roberts says that oftentimes he can smell the demon in a person.
Well, they smell garlic?
I don't know. And then it says, I have heard some say that they feel fire when they get near a demon. Hagin was told by the Lord that when he lays both hands on the sick, if he feels fire going back and forth to his hands, then there's a presence of a demon in the sick person he's praying for. Now, you feel heat. I know you've shared that with us, Carl. When your hands are heated up, is that because it's a demon?
No, it isn't because the demon is the energy coming from my soul.
Right,
It's the
right,
healing energy.
right.
And some people, some healers, they sweat. Because their clothes are wringing wet when they get through doing a healing.
Okay. All right. And they try to distinguish between, explaining to people the difference between a physical sickness versus a demon possession. And they're not doing a very good job of it. I really couldn't find anything. But again, they quote that same Matthew 17:15 about the boy being healed and having Jesus take the demon out. And this is one of their reasons for trying to explain away.
Well, whoever this is, they're always bringing up the name of Jesus. It's just as if he's the only one on that side.
Right.
My God, he must be a lonesome person.
Well, isn't he the only one? To most of these religions, he is. He's the focus. Do what Jesus
Give me
did.
a break.
You know, we keep talking about recycled ignorance, and if these people are want to believe in first century theology and first century medicine, then they shouldn't go to their doctors and get flu shots and go for operations or check their blood pressure or anything. You know, it's like, you know, how hypocritical is that?
I know it. This is true.
And they shouldn't be taking those bottles of aspirin off of the counter in the store
That's right.
and taking home.
That's right. The whole pharmaceutical industry would be shot.
Sure.
Pfizer's
wouldn't
would
be
go out
needed.
Aren't
of
those Satan's pills? I mean, if you go back into that theology, all that anything that could never be explained was always the work of the devil. So all these the women that understood herbology and used to heal people with herbs, they called them witches. They
Oh, sure.
They were in league with the devil.
Sure.
So then, if you want to have a first century mind, then don't go to a pharmacy, because the whole thing's the work of the devil. If you want to think that way.
Now, speaking about current times versus older times, the Monsignor Corrado Balducci, the Vatican's chief exorcist, says the church has to adapt to modern thinking, and they're trying to be more careful in distinguishing between possession by evil spirits and what are more commonly called psychiatric disturbances. So I'm guessing that they're also admitting by saying to people that there have been people that have gone by them that didn't need exorcisms, perhaps, and who only knows what they've done to some of these people.
Many years ago, I was at my grandmother's synagogue. It was a very Orthodox synagogue, and they were having a lecture. It wasn't a holiday, but they were having a lecture. One of the people was talking about something, and they were talking about exactly what we're talking about, psychiatric disorders. And I raised my hand and asked them, so tell me something. When Elijah said he heard the voice of God in the mountain, was he having a psychiatric disorder because he heard a voice that was, you know, from spirit?
Right.
And he said, well, you have to believe in something. You know, so he had no answer.
Have
You
to
know,
believe in
Rabbi said
something.
Yeah, you have to believe in something. So, in other words, so you know, he was saying that was okay, but the other one isn't. And how can they tell which is which?
Well, to take that thought, why doesn't people believe and understand that God is within them? If Jesus said we're born with two bodies, why can't they get that through their heads? The world would be better if they did.
A lot of people are still thinking that when Jesus went off into the wilderness for
Wilderness.
40 days and 40 nights, it's because he was tempted by Satan.
He was not. He went there to take care of his ego. He had an ego just like everybody on the planet has an ego. He had to go deal with that because he was being told by Moses with his spirit control, Elijah was his spirit teacher, and they were with him constantly. And they were telling him, you got to go into the desert to be by yourself, and you've got to get over this ego. You got to get rid of that completely, and that's exactly what he did. But they told him that he was out there with the devil, drinking wine and having a great time
Really?
before he went into his ministry. What a lot of bull.
Well, they're getting a lot of mileage off of that. They're
Oh,
getting
yeah.
a lot of mileage.
But you remember now, and for the people, get out your book, your Bible again, and go into the chapter on the Mount of Transfiguration. This is in the New Testament now. This is
Luke chapter 9,
chapter 9 of
verse 28.
verse 28. And this is where Jesus went up, took Peter, James, and John, his three advanced students, and went up into the mountains, and it was there that Moses materialized and Elijah materialized and had a talk with Jesus about what was going to happen in the next few days, and sure enough, every bit of that came true. He did that deliberately so those three students would see this, because this is a psychic event, to carry that to the rest of the world. You will not hear any church talk about this,
No.
because they don't want people to know this. They don't want them to know what this is.
Right.
And it'll probably be because of these programs here that will shorten my life, because I've been told that.
Well, speaking of shortening things, we're just about out of time today. I wish we could share more. It's always a pleasure. I hope our viewers have learned something from this and have had a chance to open their minds. And we will continue on, one topic at a time, one show at a time.
One quick comment.
Okay.
People, know that God is within you. Not out there, within you. That's the other body. And when you want to say a prayer, say, Lord God of my being, unto the Father within, come forward and help me with this project, whatever it is you're doing. And the more you do that, the more that will wake up and the more it will work with you.
Thank you. And thank you, Sidney Schwartz.
Thank you, Tina.
And Reverend Carl Hewitt. Thank you, viewers. Don't forget to send for the book, My First Encounter with an Angel. Information will be presented at the end of the show on how to order that book. And I thank you until next time. Be well.